Welcome to the Sleep Narrator. I know you use these videos to drift off into slumber, so before you close your eyes, take a second to like the video and subscribe. Also, let me know where are you watching from and what time is it for you right now. Now, settle in, get comfortable, and let your mind wander as I tell you a story. January, Washington, D.C. The snow had started again. A thin veil of white settling over the rooftops of the Capitol. Inside the executive mansion, President Abraham Lincoln stood alone at the tall window of his study, his silhouette long and lean against the gaslight glow. His eyes, tired but sharp, scanned the street below. Though he wasn't really watching for anything, he was waiting. The fire behind him cracked once, like a gunshot. He didn't flinch. The knock came precisely at midnight. He crossed the room with quiet certainty and opened the heavy oak door. A boy no older than 15 stood there, cheeks red from cold, eyes wide with purpose. "For you, sir," the boy said, handing him a small, oilskin-wrapped envelope. Lincoln nodded once and shut the door without a word. He moved to the desk, sat, and unwrapped the package. The envelope was sealed with wax, black and unmarked. He broke it with his thumb and unfolded the single sheet inside. The message was written in cipher, not the standard Union code, but one older, personal, one he hadn't seen in nearly 20 years. He translated it in seconds. "The sigil has been found. Vault 47 breached. The collector is active." Lincoln closed his eyes. It had begun. He stood, moving to a bookshelf against the far wall. From behind Plato's Republic, he drew out a small, iron key. Its head was shaped like an eagle, wings outstretched. He slipped it into his coat pocket. There would be no rest tonight. The tunnel beneath the War Department was narrow, cut stone walls, slick with damp. Lincoln walked alone, the lantern in his left hand casting wild shadows ahead of him. In his right, the iron key felt heavier than it should. Its weight was memory. At the end of the passage, a door appeared, iron-banded oak, scarred by time. He knocked 3 times, then twice, then once. A pattern only 3 men alive knew. It opened without a sound. Inside, the room was windowless and low-ceilinged, lined with books and strange instruments, charts, bones, a preserved crow under glass. The air smelled of pipe smoke and lavender. The man waiting inside wore a Confederate officer's coat, though the insignia had been burned away. His face was angular, pale, with eyes that seemed to miss nothing. "You're late," the man said. Lincoln closed the door behind him. "I'm always late when I don't want to come." The man chuckled. "Same as ever, Abe. Is it true? About Vault?" The man's smile faded. He reached into a leather satchel and placed a bundle on the table. Inside, photographs, notes, a broken seal with a familiar eagle sigil, one wing snapped clean off. This was taken from the wreckage in Virginia. A rebel dig team stumbled into something they couldn't understand. Half of them didn't survive. Lincoln scanned the photographs. One image stopped him cold, a wall covered in glyphs. The same ones he'd seen as a boy, carved into the stone beneath New Salem. And the collector? Confirmed. He's surfaced in New Orleans. "We think he's looking for the hand." Lincoln exhaled slowly. "If he finds it, it won't be a war we're fighting anymore." "No," the man agreed. "It'll be worse." Lincoln turned toward the door. "I'll leave by morning. Tell Stanton to cover my absence with a fabricated campaign trip. And if they question it—" Lincoln paused. "Then remind them what happened in Kansas." The man in the smoke smiled again, but this time it didn't reach his eyes. Lincoln left the room and didn't look back. The carriage rocked gently over frost-bitten ruts as it wound its way deeper into the Virginia hills. Lincoln sat alone in the back, cloaked in gray wool and silence. He hadn't spoken since they crossed the Potomac. The driver, a mute sergeant with scars on his throat, needed no instruction. He knew the way, and he knew not to ask questions. By the time they reached the dig site near the foothills of the Blue Ridge, Twilight had surrendered to night. A black sky hung overhead, cloudless and vast, and the moon cast pale light over the wreckage below. Vault 47 had been buried beneath a hillside orchard. Now, that hill was a crater. Lincoln stepped down from the carriage, boots crunching into gravel and ash. The earth was torn open. Scaffolding snapped like bones, and ladders twisted and half-buried. Smears of dried blood painted broken timbers. A cannon lay on its side, cracked in two like a toy. He stood at the crater's edge and took in the silence. No wind, no birds, just the low, electric buzz of something unnatural humming beneath his feet. He descended slowly, a torch in one hand, the eagle key gripped tightly in the other. The descent was steep, but his steps were steady. He moved like someone who had seen this before, maybe in a memory, maybe in a nightmare. Inside the ruined vault, the walls pulsed faintly with a reddish glow, like coals under snow. Symbols covered the stone, ancient and fluid. They didn't just decorate the walls, they were the walls woven into the very marrow of the place. Lincoln reached the inner chamber, where the true damage had been done. 10 bodies lay scattered across the floor, Union engineers, Confederate saboteurs. No gunfire wounds, no blades. Their faces were frozen in rapture, eyes wide, mouths open in silent ecstasy, like they had seen something beautiful, or terrible, or both. In the center of the room, a pedestal split in half. Something had been pried from its base. A depression shaped like a handprint was burned into the stone. Lincoln crouched, tracing the scorched mark with his fingers. As he did, the stone trembled faintly. A single word filled his mind, unspoken but clear. Awaken. His breath hitched. He stood, scanned the chamber. Then he saw the trail. Blackened footprints. Some humanoid, some not, led away from the pedestal and disappeared into a collapsed corridor to the north. He lit another torch and followed. The tunnel narrowed, forcing him to crouch. The air grew hotter, dense with the copper stink of old blood, and something else, something sweet and wrong, like decayed flowers. A chamber opened up. Inside, carved into the far wall, was a mural. Lincoln lifted his torch. It showed 3 figures, one man, one beast, and one that was both. The man wore a crown of thorns and chains around his wrists. The beast devoured stars, and the third, blurred, its face scratched out, stood between them, holding a key in one hand and a scroll in the other. Beneath them were words in ancient script, which he read aloud. The hand shall open the door. The door shall judge the worthy. The worthy shall rise. He stepped back. The heat intensified. Suddenly, from behind the wall, a sound, a low moan, deep and echoing, like something stirring in its sleep. Lincoln lowered the torch. He knew what had happened here. The collector had taken the artifact, the hand, and fled. But not before opening something. Not fully. Not yet. He turned and began the long ascent back to the surface. When he emerged into the cold night air, the mute driver stood ready, reins in hand. Lincoln climbed into the carriage without a word. New Orleans, he said. The driver nodded, and they rode off into the dark. The Mississippi night was thick with smoke and river mist, each breath humid and metallic. New Orleans pulsed with music and murmurs in the distance, but where Lincoln stood in the ruins of a once-abandoned plantation on the outskirts of the city, there was only silence. He crouched beside a fresh grave, running a gloved hand over the loose soil. It hadn't been dug for the dead. It had been dug to hide something. Buried beneath the surface was a circle of black candles, their wicks soaked in a strange green wax that never fully hardened, and a cloth parcel tied with crimson cord. Lincoln untied the knot and slowly unwrapped it. Inside was a book. The pages were made of hide. Not leather. Hide. Human or otherwise, he couldn't say. The language was the same script etched into the vault walls. He didn't need to read it. He had memorized the words long ago. The driver remained by the carriage, eyes fixed ahead. You smell it too, Lincoln said softly. Don't you? A faint nod. Lincoln opened the book to the center page and pressed 2 fingers to a symbol inked in rust-red pigment. The air vibrated. His vision flickered, and his voice whispered back to him, "You are late." He looked up. A figure stood where there had been only mist seconds before. A woman in black, with skin like polished ash and eyes like ink. "Mercy," he said, "you shouldn't be here." "Not yet. I never left." "Not really." Mercy stepped forward. Her boots didn't make a sound. Her presence seemed to warp the fog around her. "You opened the seal," she said. Lincoln nodded. The collector took the hand. "Vault 47 is lost." Mercy closed her eyes. "Then the door is waking. We don't have time." "We never did." From her coat, Mercy withdrew a knife. It wasn't made of metal. It shimmered with the color of deep water and dreamless sleep. "You remember the ritual?" she asked. Lincoln didn't respond. He rolled up his sleeve. Beneath the fabric, scarred into his arm, was the mark of the binding, a sigil no one living had seen in over 2 centuries. He extended his wrist. The blade kissed flesh. Blood welled instantly, and with it the air began to pulse. They worked in silence. Candles were lit. Salt was drawn in circles. The book was opened to the page titled Witness. Mercy read the words. Lincoln bled onto the soil, and when it was done, a door appeared. Not a physical door, but a shimmer in the air, like heat on stone. Beyond it, something moved. Something old. Lincoln stared into the threshold, eyes narrowing. "Did he go through?" Mercy nodded. "He didn't know what it was. He thought it was a weapon." "He's wrong." She looked at him then, the weight of centuries behind her gaze. "You'll have to follow him." "I know." She touched his shoulder. "And if you fail, I won't." And then, without another word, Abraham Lincoln stepped into the unknown. The world beyond the door was not a place. It was a wound. The sky above Lincoln shimmered like oil on water. Bleeding colors that had no names. Trees towered without leaves, their trunks twisting as if caught mid-scream. The ground breathed beneath his boots. Every breath he took felt stolen, borrowed from something watching. Lincoln did not hesitate. His stride was calm, purposeful. He had walked through war and worse. Whatever waited here, it would not find him afraid. He followed the path of blackened soil, footprints burned deep into the strange earth. The collector left a trail not because he was careless, but because he wanted Lincoln to follow. That was his mistake. The landscape pulsed with memory. Whispers rose from the windless trees. Names, places, lies, and truths tangled in the air like cobwebs. Somewhere, a bell tolled. Not from a church, but from deep underground. Ahead, the trail ended at a monolithic structure, a black obelisk half buried in the ground, etched with symbols that shimmered faintly when Lincoln approached. At its base, a door, real this time, iron and wood bound with bone. Lincoln knocked once. The door opened inward without a sound. Inside, torches burned with blue fire. The corridor beyond curved downward, spiraling like the inside of a shell. He descended slowly, each step echoing with a heartbeat that wasn't his. At the bottom, a chamber, wide, domed, lit from above by a single shaft of light. And in the center, kneeling before an altar of stone, was the collector. He was tall, thin, wrapped in cloth, so dark it seemed to drink the light. His face was hidden beneath a mask, carved from ivory, smooth, featureless, save for 2 vertical slits where the eyes should be. He did not turn when he spoke. "You followed. I knew you would." Lincoln stepped forward. "You've always mistaken inevitability for cleverness." The collector stood. His hands were long, fingers gloved in something that glimmered like scales. "You abandoned your purpose, Abraham. You left the circle. You chose the light. I chose to remember what we swore to protect. You chose to feed it." The collector lifted a small object from the altar. The hand. It looked nothing like a weapon. Small, black, withered, but it pulsed, and Lincoln felt it in his teeth. "This world belongs to the worthy," the collector said, "and I have been judged." "No," Lincoln said, stepping closer. "You have been warned." They moved at once. The collector raised the hand. Lincoln raised his own fingers, curled, speaking words not heard since the founding of the Republic. Power cracked the air. The chamber shuddered. A voice, ancient and endless, roared through them both. And suddenly, they weren't alone. The door had opened. From the shadows beyond the altar, a shape emerged. Not beast, not man, but something in between. Eyes like stars. A crown of fire. It looked at Lincoln, and it smiled. The collector dropped to his knees. "I have served," he whispered. "I have opened the way." The figure said nothing. It turned to Lincoln. "You have bled for truth," it said. "You have bound yourself to the old law." Lincoln did not answer. "Then choose," the being said. "Him or the world." Lincoln looked at the collector, at the hand, at the altar, and then up at the sky beyond the broken ceiling. He made his choice, and the door began to close. The storm had passed by the time Lincoln emerged from the realm beyond the door. Dawn broke over New Orleans in smears of orange and gray, as if the sky had burned through the night. He stood alone on the steps of the ruined chapel, the hand sealed in a lead-lined box beneath his coat. The collector was gone. Not dead. Something worse, bound to whatever waited on the other side. Lincoln didn't mourn him. The collector had made his bed long ago. The streets were empty. The city hadn't yet stirred from sleep, though somewhere in the quarter, a lone trumpet wept a slow, somber tune. It followed him through the alleyways as he walked. She was waiting. Mercy stood under a wrought-iron archway in Jackson Square, cloaked in a dark veil, gloved hands folded in front of her. She hadn't aged since he last saw her. Not by a day. That was the price she had paid. Lincoln stopped a few feet away. "You came back," she said. "I never left." Her eyes flicked to the coat. "You have it?" He nodded. "The door is shut. For now." She looked out across the square. "That won't hold. Not forever." "I don't need forever," he said. "Just long enough." Mercy stepped closer. "You should burn it." The hand. "Toss it in the river and let it drown with the lies." "I will," he said. "After one more use." Her expression darkened. "You swore." "I swore to protect the Republic. I'm keeping that oath." She said nothing for a long time. "Then they won't understand." They never did. The two of them stood in silence, two ghosts beneath the rising sun. "Why did you name her that?" Mercy asked. He looked up. "Your daughter. You named her after me." Lincoln's voice was barely a whisper. "Because you saved me." Mercy turned. "I damned you, Abraham." "No," he said. "You reminded me what it meant to feel human." She disappeared into the shadows of the garden. Lincoln didn't follow. Later that evening, he boarded a northbound train under an assumed name. No one recognized him, not even the conductor. He sat alone in the last car, coat buttoned to the neck, top hat pulled low. He took out a journal, leather-bound, worn at the edges. Inside were sketches, glyphs, sigils, and diagrams of Vault 47. In the margins, he wrote in cipher, "Mercy still remembers. The door can be resealed, but not destroyed. The hand reacts to blood, truth, and legacy. Must investigate connection to Monticello." Jefferson suspected more than he admitted. The train rattled north. Abraham Lincoln leaned back, closed his eyes, and listened to the rhythm of the tracks. There was work yet to do, and not much time to do it. The meeting was set for midnight. The location, an old Quaker church outside Philadelphia, long since abandoned, its roof half collapsed and pews rotting with moss and time. It hadn't held a sermon in decades, but it was holy in its own way. A place where secrets gathered like dust. Lincoln arrived on horseback, alone. He tethered the animal at the edge of the woods. beyond the reach of moonlight, and approached the chapel on foot. The door was ajar. Inside, the circle was already assembled. They wore no uniforms, no symbols, and no expressions of welcome. There were 9 of them now, though once there had been 13, the old number, the sacred number. He stepped through the threshold. The room grew still. "Abraham," said the man nearest the pulpit. His voice was clipped, Bostonian, and cold. "Samuel," Lincoln said, "you were not invited." "I don't need an invitation." That got a few looks. Someone shifted in the shadows. Someone else grunted. Lincoln removed his hat, brushed snow from his coat, and stepped into the circle's center. He reached into his coat and placed the box, the lead-lined container holding the hand on the broken altar. Gasps. One man rose halfway before being pulled down by another. "You brought it here," Samuel hissed. "Are you mad?" "No," Lincoln said, "but some of you are, and it's time we had clarity." "You have no authority here," said a woman in the back. Her voice trembled with fury. "I have all the authority," Lincoln said, "because I'm the only one who's touched a thing," and walked away. The room fell silent again. He stepped back from the altar and folded his hands. "You've forgotten why the circle exists," he continued. "It wasn't to hoard secrets. It wasn't to play God. We were formed to guard the barriers, to protect the Republic, not just from the outside, but from the within." Samuel shook his head. "The Republic is dying. You of all people should see that. It's dying because we've been poisoning it." Lincoln's voice rose. Steel in every word. "Secrecy, ritual, ambition. You've used your knowledge like a knife. But knowledge isn't the enemy. Fear is." He opened the box. The room dimmed. The fire flickered. A low hum filled the air. The hand pulsed. Half the circle stepped back. 2 dropped to their knees. Samuel held firm. "You think that makes you righteous?" "No," Lincoln said. "It makes me responsible." He shut the box and turned. "I'm going to Monticello. Jefferson left a map there. One that predates the country. It may lead to the true vault." "You'll never make it," the woman said. "Maybe not," he replied. "But if I fall, others will rise. That's the oath. That's the circle." He left them in silence. Behind him, the church groaned under its own weight. Snow began to fall again, and Abraham Lincoln rode into the night with the weight of a dying secret pressing against his heart. Monticello rose from the Virginia hills like a forgotten monument, its white columns ghostly in the fog. By day, it remained a relic of the past, visited by schoolchildren and scholars. But by night, it kept its other face, a face few had seen and fewer survived. Lincoln arrived under the cover of a false storm. Rain pelted the windows and thunder cracked low over the trees, but none of it touched him. The protection spell he'd carved into the horse's saddle glowed faintly, redirecting the weather just enough. He tethered the horse beneath the old mulberry tree, where Jefferson once sat and dreamed of liberty, and walked up the path toward the west portico. The door opened before he touched it. Inside, candlelight flickered. Dust hung thick in the air, undisturbed for weeks, or so it seemed. He moved past the books, the artifacts, the portraits. He had memorized the layout years ago. It wasn't the main floor he was interested in. It was the sub-level, the vault beneath the foundation. Jefferson had once described it as a place for the worst thoughts I ever had. Lincoln descended the narrow stairwell, pressing his palm against the wall every 6 steps. At the 7th, the wall hissed. A panel slid open, revealing a second stairwell. This one carved in stone, older than the house itself. He followed it down. The temperature dropped, the flame in his lantern dimmed. At the bottom, he reached a heavy wooden door bound in iron. A lock waited there. No keyhole, just a metal plate covered in symbols. Lincoln placed the hand against it. It pulsed. The lock dissolved. Inside, the vault was circular. The walls were etched with names. Hamilton, Adams, Franklin, Payne. Names erased from public memory, but known in this hidden place. In the center stood a pedestal, and on it, a scroll. Lincoln stepped forward and picked it up. The parchment cracked slightly at the edges. He unrolled it. It was a map, not of any physical terrain, but of ley lines, bloodlines, oaths, and ancient pacts. Symbols pulsed with heat as he read, and something in his mind stirred. Memory, not his own. Visions poured in, of fire raining from a black sky, of 13 figures chanting in a circle of bones, of a seed buried in the earth that fed on lies. He staggered back. The map whispered, and something inside Lincoln answered. Power surged through him. Not strength of body, but force of will and sight. Sight itself. He saw through walls, through time, through men. The truth flooded in. The hand wasn't a weapon. It was a key. And the vault wasn't to keep things out. It was to keep something in. He dropped the scroll. The whispers stopped. His heart thundered. He stood alone in the chamber, lit only by the glow of old secrets, and he understood what had to be done. He would use the hand once more, but not as the circle intended. He would find the seed, and he would burn it from the world. Lincoln closed the vault behind him, sealing it with blood and fire. When he emerged from Monticello hours later, the rain had stopped, the sun was rising, and he no longer felt human. Chapter 9. The Southern Right. Deep in the Louisiana bayou, far from any marked road, the Confederacy had built something they never put on any map. It wasn't a fort, it wasn't a prison, it was a temple. And tonight, it would be a stage. Lincoln moved through the swampland, like smoke, silent and deliberate. Every step guided by the map burned into his mind. Back at Monticello, he carried no lantern. His eyes no longer needed light. The power inside him had changed him, and with each passing hour it demanded more. Ahead, beyond the moss-hung trees, a faint glow lit the night. He reached the edge of a clearing and crouched behind a fallen cypress. Torches burned in a wide circle around an ancient stone altar, older than the war, older than the nation. Soldiers stood in ritual formation, gray-clad, eyes glassy, mouths whispering chants older than any Southern hymn. At the center stood a woman draped in white, her face covered by a veil stitched with bones. In her hands, she held a child, no older than 3, drugged, silent. Lincoln's jaw clenched. This was not battle. This was blood magic. He stepped forward. The soldier nearest him dropped without a sound. His rifle caught mid-breath. Another turned. Lincoln moved faster than thought. The man crumpled before he could scream. The chanting faltered, and then stopped. All eyes turned toward him as he stepped into the torchlight. Coat soaked from swamp water, face cast in shadow. The woman didn't flinch. "So the president comes," she said. Her voice echoed with something beneath it. "Let the child go," Lincoln said. "The child is the vessel," she replied. "As you were once, you of all men should know that." Lincoln took another step. The torches flickered. "You have no idea what you're awakening," he said. She laughed. "We aren't awakening. We're preparing." The stone beneath the altar began to glow. Symbols emerged in blood-red light. "Enough," Lincoln whispered. He raised his hand. The one marked in Monticello, the one that now bore the sigil of the first oath. Light burst outward. The woman screamed. The soldiers dropped to their knees, clutching their heads. The torches exploded into cinders. When the light faded, Lincoln stood alone. The altar cracked. The child lay sleeping in the grass. He stepped forward and picked the boy up gently. Whispers rose from the broken ground. Something below writhed. Lincoln turned and walked away. He didn't look back. Behind him, the Southern right was broken. But the seed had felt it, and it was beginning to stir. Lincoln stood before the mirror in a nameless boarding house just outside Baltimore. The room smelled of old smoke and older secrets. He hadn't slept in 3 days, but fatigue no longer reached him the way it used to. The hand, the map, the vault, All of it buzzed under his skin like a fever. But tonight, it was the mirror that held him. He hadn't shaved. His eyes were darker than usual, the lines around them deeper, like something inside him was aging faster than the rest. He leaned closer, and the mirror blinked. He froze. The reflection didn't match his movement. Its posture, its breath, its presence off. Deliberately so. Then it smiled. A slow, knowing curl of the lips. Not his smile. Then the voice came, quiet as breath. "Hello, Abraham." Lincoln didn't respond. The reflection moved on its own. Its eyes, his eyes, were younger. Not the president, not the man, a boy, 12 years old, wearing a shirt stitched by his mother, dirt on his cheeks, wonder in his face. The Lincoln of the Kentucky woods. "Do you remember the tree?" the boy said. Lincoln said nothing. "The black one," the boy continued. "The one that bled when you touched it." A chill ran down Lincoln's spine. "That wasn't a dream," the boy said. "That was your first door. And you never told anyone." "I was afraid," Lincoln said at last. The boy in the mirror nodded. "You should be." Behind the boy, the mirror darkened. The glass rippled. Shapes moved within. Shadows of things that hadn't happened yet. Battles not fought. Betrayals not committed. Graves not filled. The boy leaned in close. So close his breath fogged the glass. "The seed sees you," he whispered. "And it knows your name." The mirror cracked. Lincoln staggered back, pulse racing. He wiped sweat from his brow and looked again. Only his reflection. Hollow-eyed, alone. A knock came at the door. He turned. The innkeeper stood in the hallway, hat in hand. "Telegram for you, sir," the man said, nervous. "Came from Washington, real urgent." Lincoln opened it. "Vault 0 compromised. Circle in exile. Seek library of smoke. Code Monticello fell." He folded the paper. "Sir?" the innkeeper asked. "Is everything all right?" Lincoln adjusted his coat and nodded once. "Tell no one I was here." Then he stepped into the night, leaving the shattered mirror behind. The child in the glass did not follow, but it was watching. Washington, D.C. had not noticed his absence. Not yet. It was the genius of the Circle's contingency plans. If Lincoln were ever compromised or disappeared, the illusion of continuity would be preserved for the safety of the Republic, they said. A decoy, a double, a manufactured face. But this time the double wasn't made of flesh. Inside the executive mansion, cabinet members filed into the war room with heavy eyes and heavier news. The man at the head of the table looked like Lincoln, spoke like Lincoln, nodded just enough, furrowed his brow in perfect mimicry. But he was not Abraham Lincoln. He was something else. His voice carried the same gravity. His hands made the same gestures. But to the few who watched closely, really watched, something was off. He didn't blink. He didn't sweat. He didn't cast a shadow. Secretary Stanton noticed first. "You seem different, sir," Stanton said carefully. The false Lincoln smiled. "War changes a man." "Indeed," Stanton said, and kept his hand near the pistol hidden beneath his notes. At that same moment, the real Lincoln stood atop a coal train, bound for Virginia, wind slapping at his coat, eyes fixed on the Capitol dome in the distance. The telegram still burned in his pocket.
Vault 0 compromised. Code Monticello fell.
The message meant only one thing. The Circle had been breached from within. And someone or something was now using their safeguards against them. He had to return. But not directly. He had to unmask the false president before it cemented control. Back in D.C., the double addressed the press from the North Lawn. His speech was perfect, stirring, patriotic. But its words held too much certainty, too much control. The real Lincoln often spoke with uncertainty, wrestling aloud with conscience. This one did not hesitate. It said what needed to be said, and nothing more. When it turned to re-enter the White House, a boy watching from the crowd began to cry. His mother asked what was wrong. "That's not the president," the boy said, pointing. "That's his skin." The crowd hushed. The double turned, smiled, and blinked horizontally. Lincoln arrived in D.C. just past midnight. He wrote a hidden line through the old tunnel system beneath the city, accompanied only by Mercy and a former Union spy named Greaves. Greaves had no tongue. Mercy had no patience. "This thing wearing your face," she said, "it's not just pretending, it's rehearsing." "I know," Lincoln replied. "And if it gives one more order in my name, it won't just have the army, it'll have the nation." "Then we need to take back the name," Mercy said. They reached a hidden access point in the White House cellar. Greaves picked the lock. Mercy drew her blade, the one that cut between layers of truth. Lincoln reached for the hand. He felt it pulse. The double was close. He stepped into the hall, heart steady, eyes burning. Guards turned and froze. Some recognized him. Others blinked, confused. Two reached for weapons. The double emerged at the top of the stairs. It smiled. "There you are," it said. "I was wondering how long you'd take." "I've seen ghosts," Lincoln said. "You're not one of them." "I'm better," the double replied. "I'm what comes after." They met in the center of the hallway, and the White House held its breath. Later, when the smoke cleared, no record of the confrontation remained. The false president was gone. The real one had a cut across his right cheek, deep, almost ceremonial, but he stood, and the Republic stood with him. For now, Monticello burned once before. Quietly, a fire no one wrote about, started in the dead of night by a man with no name and no tongue. The official story blamed lightning, but those who knew the circle, the old guard, they remembered it differently. They called it the Purge. The man who lit the match had been told to destroy only one room. He burned half the estate. That room, the library beneath Jefferson's personal chambers, was never rebuilt. Or so they said. But the Library of Smoke was not a place you rebuilt. It was a place that rebuilt itself. Lincoln and Mercy arrived on horseback just after dusk, cloaked under thick clouds and rolling fog. The mansion had been emptied, its remaining caretakers long since dismissed under a forged presidential order. They didn't use the main entrance. Instead, Mercy led him through the side door near the kitchen gardens, down a narrow hallway Lincoln had never seen. At the end was a boarded wall. Mercy pressed her hand against it, whispered something old. The boards peeled back on their own. They stepped inside. The air changed immediately. Thick, heavy with ash. Not the scent of burning, but of what had already burned. The library stretched out before them. Endless shelves wrapped in shadow. There were no lanterns, no natural light. The books glowed faintly, as if lit from within. Lincoln stepped between the shelves, heart pounding. "This wasn't here when I came last," he said. "It was," Mercy replied. "You just weren't ready to see it." He touched a volume bound in rough skin. No title. The book whispered as his fingers brushed it. Names. A scream that never ended. "Don't open that one," Mercy said. "It remembers too much." They moved deeper. The shelves shifted around them. Not mechanically, organically, like lungs inhaling, reshaping. The library wanted them to find something, and then they did. At the heart of the maze stood a stone lectern. Resting atop it, a single book wrapped in chains. Lincoln stepped forward. The book vibrated with heat. "This is the ledger," Mercy said. "Everything the circle buried, every ritual, every weapon, every deal, even the seed." Lincoln reached for the chains. "Wait," she said. "Once you read it, there's no unknowing." "I don't need to know," Lincoln said. "I need to stop what's coming." He touched the chains. They unlatched on their own. The book opened, and the library held its breath. What Lincoln read didn't make sense. Not at first. Symbols, languages, sketches that seemed to crawl when unobserved, but then a pattern. The seed. It was not an object, not a person, Not even a being. It was a promise, a thought, planted once, long ago in the minds of men, watered by war, fed by fear. It grew when power was worshipped, when lies were repeated, when the truth became negotiable. The seed didn't need armies, it needed memory. And the circle, despite its purpose, had protected it. Lincoln snapped the book shut. "The seed isn't buried," he said. "It's in us." Mercy nodded. "That's why we can't kill it. Only starve it." "No," Lincoln said, eyes narrowing. "I'm going to burn it." He turned and walked out of the library. "Bind him," the books whispered, and the shelves began to rearrange again. For the next visitor, January, Washington, D.C. The East Room was silent. Not in mourning, not in ceremony, silent in awe. The crowd of dignitaries, soldiers, freedmen, clerics, and skeptics watched as President Lincoln stood behind a writing desk, quill in hand, and stared at the parchment that would change the country forever, the Emancipation Proclamation. But what no one saw was the mark burned beneath the ink. Lincoln had written the first version with ordinary tools. This one, this final draft, was inked with blood and truth. The hand lay on the table beside the quill, covered with a silk cloth. Mercy stood in the shadows, arms folded, watching. No one else saw her. No one ever did, unless she wanted them to. The room pulsed faintly. The chandeliers swayed, though there was no wind. One man near the back blinked hard and thought for a moment that he saw fire behind the president's eyes. But it passed. Lincoln signed. The script glowed faintly just for a second. The oath etched into the signature. Then silence. He stood. "It is done," he said. A cheer erupted. The room moved as one. Applause. Tears. Praise. Hope. But Lincoln turned away. He stepped into the hallway and walked alone. In his private study, he lit a fire and unwrapped the hand. It no longer pulsed, no longer moved. "I've given it purpose," he whispered. "One final use, one rightful use." He placed it in a lid box lined with salt and ash, sealed it. Then he opened a second envelope, sealed with the broken circle sigil. Inside, a single phrase: "The seed is moving north." Lincoln stared at the hearth. The flames danced like serpents. He picked up his coat. Outside, the crowds chanted his name. History had changed, but the war beneath the war was still raging, and its final chapter had just begun. The train to New York cut through a snowstorm like a blade through silk. Lincoln sat alone in the last car, bundled against the cold, his eyes scanning the blurred white beyond the window. The letter from the circle's remnants lay folded in his coat. "The seed is moving north. It seeks the final door." The words felt heavier than prophecy. They felt inevitable. Mercy sat across from him, sharpening a blade that could not be dulled. It whispered with every pass of the whetstone, like wind through dry leaves. "You know what's behind it?" she asked. "No," Lincoln said, "but I know it wants to be let out." Mercy stopped sharpening. "And you're still going to open it?" "I'm going to make sure no one else can." The final door was hidden beneath an old Dutch church in the Catskills, a ruin swallowed by snowdrifts and rumor. The locals called it cursed. Half the town claimed it vanished each winter and returned in spring. Lincoln knew better. It was older than the war, older than the country. It was carved not by hand, but by will. They reached the church at dawn. Greaves waited there, face gaunt, eyes hollow. He led them through the nave, past pews frozen in place, into a narrow crypt beneath the altar. There, hidden behind a wall of scripture, lay the true entrance, a door with no hinges, no handle, only a shape, the outline of a hand. Lincoln stepped forward. "It's not too late to turn back," Mercy said. "Yes, it is," he said. "And it has been for a long time." He pressed the hand against the stone. It pulsed. Once. Then the wall split open with a sound like bones cracking. Beyond the door was not a room, not a hall. It was a chasm, dark, endless, alive. Whispers rushed out to meet them, not from a voice, but from memory itself. Lincoln staggered forward, caught flashes in the dark, a field burning in the future, a tower of smoke rising from a city that did not yet exist, a child with no eyes laughing, his own tombstone, clean and waiting. He moved forward anyway. At the center of the void stood a tree, black, dead, its bark carved with names, the seed. It wasn't a thing, it was everything. Every lie told with conviction. Every cruelty was wrapped in righteousness. Every moment, someone chose silence over truth. Lincoln reached into his coat, the lead box. He opened it. The hand vibrated. The seed reacted. The ground trembled. "Abraham," Mercy said, her voice cracking. "What are you doing?" "I'm giving it what it wants," he said. "No. And I'm going to end it anyway." He pressed the hand to the base of the tree. The void screamed. The bark split. Fire poured from the cracks. The names on the tree caught flame. One by one, the air turned to glass. Mercy shielded her face. Lincoln stood still and spoke, a word older than language, a name. His name. The void collapsed. The tree burned. The seed withered. And the door began to close, this time not by force, but by choice. His, Mercy screamed, "Abhay." But it was too late. He was gone, and the world was quiet again. Washington, D.C., April 5th. The theater was full. The air smelled of perfume and powder, candles flickering like memories in the rafters. The audience laughed at a joke on stage, unaware of the moment folding in on itself. A man stepped through the shadows with a pistol and a plan, his path untouched by fate. But history bent quietly that night. Because Abraham Lincoln wasn't in the box, he was in the basement of Ford's Theater, beneath the floorboards, beneath the foundation, where a sealed chamber had once been used by the Circle for private meetings. Mercy stood beside him, pale and silent, a scar now running down the length of her arm from the final door. The world believed him dead. And that was the point. The seed had been starved, its roots salted. But it had left behind tendrils in the minds of men, ideas still echoing in dark corners. Power, after all, was a hunger that could never be truly buried. Lincoln no longer belonged to the world. He watched through an old mirror as the assassin pulled the trigger in an empty box. Panic erupted. Soldiers would rush in. Blame would be cast. The myth would be born. "Is this justice?" Mercy asked. "No," Lincoln said. "It's necessity." He turned away from the mirror. A new ledger lay open on the table before him. He wrote the first entry. "Let no oath rise without truth. Let no truth stand without sacrifice." He set the pen down. Outside, the world mourned a martyr. Below, in silence, the guardian wrote. The hollow oath was over, and the next chapter was waiting.